Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, first tonight, for years Anjem Choudray enjoyed needling everyone with his silly pronouncements that Buckingham Palace will become a mosque, for example. But he was not just a harmless controversialist. He spread hate for 2 decades, attempted to radicalise others, and for some of that period, invited them to join so-called Islamic State, an organisation proscribed under the Terrorism Act of 2000. He could now be handed a maximum jail sentence of 10 years. But while Choudray is very well known, alongside him was another character, Mizanur Rahman, who had also done a lot to attract vulnerable minds to jihad. The police said that Rahman and Choudray had stayed just within the law for many years, but when they pledged an oath of allegiance to IS, they had stepped over a line and could be prosecuted. Well, Secunda Kamani is with me. Secunda, just first of all, let's talk about Anjem Choudray and where this very well-known character came from.
Well, look, Anjem Choudray wasn't always part of the Islamist scene. He grew up in southeast London, and when he went to university, for example, he reportedly drank alcohol, had girlfriends. But after having qualified as a solicitor in the late 90s, early 2000s, he helped found the radical group Al-Muhajirun. You might remember this group was subsequently banned, but it kept changing its name all the time almost to try and evade the attention of the authorities. And Anjem Choudray became a source of a great deal of frustration to the authorities. They thought he was dangerous, but he wasn't quite ever breaking the law, it seems. But until now, because today restrictions in court were lifted, which allow us to reveal that 3 weeks ago he was convicted of having pledged support online to ISIS and having encouraged in his videos others to support and join the group too. And this really is a significant moment, the jailing of Anjem Choudray. I mean, he's been linked to at least around 100 British jihadis. We know, for example, that the followers of his were involved in the killing of Lee Rigby in Woolwich. We know that other followers of his were involved in a 2010 plot to blow up the London Stock Exchange. And it's not just here in Britain. I mean, a large number of people have also gone off to Syria. For example, some of them being quite high profile, like Siddhartha Dar, who took his young family out to Syria with him. There's another one of his followers, Abu Rahin Aziz, who was killed in a drone strike in Syria last year. And those are some of the ones who were quite high profile. There's others whose names have never come into the public domain. I mean, just to run through some of those who I've learnt about, this is one of Anjem Choudray's followers from North London who went out to Syria. And we should be able to see pictures of another one of his followers. They're on the right of screen. And he, I understand now, is dead.
I mean, so that's Choudray. I mean, he's obviously got a long track record. There also, though, was this other guy. And most people, I think, will not have heard of him.
Yes, absolutely. Look, there's a whole clique around Anjem Choudray, and some of the clique have higher profiles, some of them have lesser ones. His co-defendant, Mizanur Rahman, was actually, in my view, just as significant, perhaps even more significant than Anjem Choudray when it comes to the Syrian conflict.
How's the campaign to move Britain over to Sharia law coming along?
Well, this is in the hands of God.
Anjem Choudray attracted headlines, but amongst jihadi circles, he gradually became less significant. In recent years, it was his right-hand man, Mizanur Rahman, who took more of a centre stage. Rahman had spent 4 years in jail already for soliciting murder during the Danish cartoon protests. He had more credibility.
For Islam to prevail, for the Sharia to be implemented, to support the state, to help. Well, because you think it's not just about fighting.
He was younger too, and more active on social media.
Just like Anjem Choudray, Mizanur was someone that provided the theological basis for people to go and join Islamic State. But what was different, what sets him apart from someone like Anjem Choudray is the fact that he was very willing and active in engaging directly with people over social media, so over Twitter, giving direct advice, theological advice.
In January, whilst he was still on bail, I met Rahman. Like Choudray, he's always been someone difficult to pin down.
But are you radicalising people? Is that how you see yourself?
These terms, radicalising, you need to define it. Is Jeremy Corbyn radicalising the Labour Party, for example? You wouldn't use those terms. Why not? So if you mean, am I debating people and convincing people of that my ideas might be correct, well, that's what you do in a debate. And
Even if those ideas at times break the law?
No, they don't break the law. We already established that we stay within the light side of the law.
Well, you spent time in jail already.
Nothing.
So
Yeah.
at times they break the law?
No.
By the time this airs, you might be in jail.
Yeah, quite possibly, but not because I broke any laws, but because there's a political system in place which doesn't really want to allow for speech.
Rahman tried to be careful in his language. This was an exchange of text messages between him and Anjem Choudray. Choudray says to Rahman, open support for ISIS or Jabhat al-Nusra may not be wise. We need to think about our message. Rahman replies, maybe condemning Shia and the Free Syrian Army and a general call for Sharia in Syria without mentioning other names? The declaration of a caliphate by ISIS pushed Rahman towards more explicit support. But without a passport, Rahman was stuck in Britain on social media. One Twitter exchange he had with a young American Muslim shows how he operated. He's asked if preaching is more important than helping establish the Khilafah or Caliphate. He replies, preaching is important, but it's also obligatory to establish the Caliphate. A few months later, the American was arrested at an airport on his way to Syria.
He asked me an Islamic question, and the concept of the Khilafah is 1400 years old. Let's just be honest. Look. You know, somebody does not have one Twitter conversation and they decide to change their whole life based on one tweet.
Rahman insisted in court too that his talks were about general Islamic principles. The jury decided otherwise.
Well, Sek is still with me. Sek, I mean, there are still, there's a network around these people, isn't there? I mean, what does this, the conviction of these two, mean for that whole network?
Well, look, Evan, I mean, when Rahman and Choudray were arrested in September 2014, at the time the authorities were really desperate, I think, to crack this network, which wasn't just in Britain, but had franchises across Europe, in Belgium, Holland, Denmark. And they were worried about not just people going to Syria, but the possibility of attacks here. I think subsequently with this conviction, this network has been significantly disrupted. We've seen other large numbers of the network who've already gone to Syria. And finally, I can reveal that actually recently, quite a large number of Anjem Choudhray's followers have been placed on TPIMs, terrorism prevention orders, which means that they haven't been convicted, but they're under curfews, restricted access to the internet.
Skunda, thanks very much.
I've been getting away